The behind-the-scenes story of this movie is something you'd never guess, and it only gets stranger from here. Before becoming a global hit, The Fast and the Furious was held together by casting changes, constant rewrites, and production decisions that nearly shut down the entire film. What looks like a polished street racing classic was actually built on chaos, last-minute fixes, and problems that almost stopped it from being released at all. So what really happened during the making of the film? And which strange details never made it into the final cut? Join us as we reveal 21 weird facts you didn't know about The Fast and the Furious. Number 21. The origin story nobody expected. The entire Fast and Furious franchise began with a magazine article. Director Rob Cohen was reading the 1998 issue of Vibe magazine when he came across a piece called Racer X, written by journalist Ken Lee. The article documented the illegal street racing underground operating in New York City at the time, and that immediately piqued his interest. He contacted producer Neil H. Moritz, and the project went into development in late 1998. Ken Lee, who wrote the original article, was paid for the rights to it, and the concept that eventually became one of the most lucrative franchises in cinema history began as 2,000 words about a scene most Americans had never heard of. But even as the film was coming together, its identity was still unsettled, and the name kept changing. Number 20. It almost wasn't called The Fast and the Furious. For most of its production, the film was called Red Line, not The Fast and the Furious. The producers considered multiple titles. Racer X, after the original article, Race Wars, Street Wars, and Red Line were all in the running. Producer Neil H. Moritz was watching a documentary about American International Pictures when he encountered a 1954 film also called The Fast and the Furious, a B-movie about street racing, directed by Roger Corman. The title was right. And while the title was being negotiated, the studio was still unsure whether the film itself was even worth that level of investment. Number 19. The budget doubled after early doubts. Universal's original budget offer for the film was $20 million. This was considered genuinely insufficient for what the filmmakers were envisioning, and it reflected the studio's uncertainty about the concept. The eventual production budget came in at $38 million, which was still modest by the standards of a summer action relief. And even with the money in place, the story itself wasn't entirely original. It was built on a familiar blueprint. Number 18. It was inspired by Point Break. The film is a deliberate and acknowledged adaptation of Point Break, the 1991 Keanu Reeves film in which an FBI agent goes undercover to infiltrate a group of surfer bank robbers. Director Rob Cohen and the writers were open about that. They replaced surfing with street racing, replaced bank robbery with truck hijacking, and kept the core dynamic of an undercover cop developing genuine loyalty to the man he was sent to put in prison. What about the casting? Because the people you know in these roles were almost not the people in these roles, and the gap between who was considered and who was cast contains some of the most surprising what-ifs in franchise history. Number 17. The cast that almost was not. Timothy Olyphant was the studio's first choice to play Dominic Toretto. However, Olyphant declined. His reason was that he thought the project would be, in his own words, stupid. He was not entirely wrong about the film's depth of storytelling, but he was spectacularly wrong about its commercial potential. Moritz then pushed for Vin Diesel, who had come to attention through Pitch Black in 2000. Diesel was initially reluctant. He had only ever played supporting roles at that point, and taking a lead in a film about street racing was a significant gamble. He accepted the role only after proposing several changes to the script, which the production accommodated. But before the franchise could even lock in its central duo, the casting search for Brian O'Connor was just as wide and far more unexpected. Number 16. Almost every version of Brian looked different. Before Paul Walker was cast as Brian O'Connor, the role was considered for Christian Bale, Mark Wahlberg, and Eminem. Paul was cast earlier in the process than most people realized. Producer Moritz had previously worked with him on The Skulls in 2000, handed him the script, offered him the role, and Paul said yes immediately. The casting of Paul before the major stars were locked in means that the foundational element of the film, the blonde, earnest undercover cop whose loyalty fractures under pressure, was settled before any of the other pieces. The three actors who were considered for the role before Paul would have produced completely different film. A Mark Wahlberg Brian O'Connor against a Vin Diesel Dom Toretto is essentially a different movie, and that same level of near misses and alternate timelines played out across the rest of the cast as well. Number 15. Mia Toretto was almost played by a major 2000 star. The role of Mia Toretto was originally written for Eliza Dushku. When Dushku declined, the audition process opened up significantly. Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jessica Biel, Kirsten Dunst, and Natalie Portman all auditioned before Jordana Brewster was cast. Jordana brought warmth and relative inexperience that matched the character's position in the story, and director Rob Cohen confirmed afterward that Paul Walker was genuinely into Jordana on set. A real-life dynamic that gave their scenes together a natural chemistry difficult to manufacture, and that same instinct for casting authenticity extended beyond Mia's role to the rest of the core ensemble. Number 14. Michelle Rodriguez was Vin Diesel's personal choice. Vin Diesel personally requested Michelle Rodriguez for the role of Letty. He had seen her in her debut film, Girl Fight, and brought her to the producer's attention. Michelle had never acted in a major studio film before, and by her own account was somewhat overwhelmed at the first table read at Universal Studios. And while some key roles were shaped by instinct and personal recommendations, other early casting ideas were far more surprising and almost completely different in tone. Number 13. The original cast was almost saved by the bell. Rob Cohen's original casting vision for the film was Mario Lopez as Dominic, Mark-Paul Gosselaar as Brian, and Dustin Diamond as Jesse. This would have been a film made entirely of cast members from the Saved by the Bell universe, a creative direction so different from what actually happened. The casting was settled after a series of near misses. Then production began, and the making of the film generated its own collection of stories, ranging from reckless to remarkable. What actually happened during those months of filming in Los Angeles? Number 12. On set and out of control, Michelle Rodriguez and Jordana Brewster both arrived at the production of The Fast and the Furious without driver's licenses. Neither of them had a learner's permit. Brewster later told VH1 that she was genuinely concerned she would be dropped from the film for insurance reasons if she could not pass her driving test, because the role required her to actually operate vehicles on camera. Michelle made the same observation in separate interviews. Both women took driving lessons during production and passed their tests. Had either of them failed, they would have been recast. And that emphasis on authenticity didn't stop at basic driving skills. It extended into full racing preparation for the entire main cast. Number 11. The cast trained like real racers before filming. All four lead actors, Paul, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jordana Brewster, attended a racing school in Las Vegas before filming began. They drove Formula One cars in preparation for the street racing sequences. Rob Cohen said in a 2015 interview that Paul Walker's natural ability behind the wheel was immediately apparent to everyone present. Paul's genuine passion for cars, which had existed before the film and intensified during its production, became one of the defining characteristics of his life and eventually contributed to his death in 2013 when he was killed in a car accident while traveling with a friend in a Porsche Carrera GT. But even during the making of the film itself, the line between on-screen drama and off-screen relationships was already beginning to blur. Number 10. Real relationships formed behind the scenes. Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez were dating off-screen during the production of the film, mirroring the Dom and Letty relationship that their characters shared on screen. Director Rob Cohen confirmed this directly, saying that Diesel began to develop feelings for Michelle or vice versa, and that Paul was genuinely drawn to Brewster. The on-screen chemistry that audiences responded to in the film was, at least partly, the product of real attraction between the people in front of the camera. And that same physical intensity wasn't limited to the romantic dynamics. It carried directly into the action scenes as well. Number 9. A stunt went genuinely too far at Race Wars. Vin Diesel accidentally broke a stuntman's nose during the Race Wars sequence. The scene involved a fight with a security guard character, and the physical exchange got considerably more real than planned. The stuntman took a punch to the face that the choreography had not accounted for, with the impact delivering a genuine fracture. This was not the only moment during production where the thin line between controlled stunt work and actual physical harm was crossed, but it is the most specific documented incident from on set. And that same commitment to practical action extended to the sheer scale of destruction the production was willing to film. Number 8. Nearly 80 cars were destroyed on set. 78 cars were wrecked during production. 3 of those destroyed cars appeared in the film's trailer alone. The climactic sequence involving Dom's Dodge Charger crashing through the side of the semi-truck was achieved using a long steel rod as a ramp to send the vehicle airborne. For the final race between Brian and Dom, the section where the cars appear to narrowly avoid being hit by a train was created by filming the cars and the train separately and compositing the footage together in post-production. The train was never anywhere close to the cars during filming, and while some of the film's biggest thrills were built in post, others relied on tightly controlled physical performances between the actors themselves. Number 7. The grocery store fight was carefully choreographed. The fight scene between Brian O'Connor and Vince outside the grocery store was extensively rehearsed and choreographed by Paul Walker and Matt Schulze before filming began. When it came time to actually shoot the scene, both actors felt that the choreographed version did not feel right. It was too staged, too controlled, lacking the specific quality of genuine conflict that the scene required. They abandoned the choreography entirely and improvised the fight. The improvisation produced a rawness that the careful choreography had smoothed away, and the scene worked precisely because it was not the version anyone had practiced. What did the film do at the box office? What did it mean for the careers of everyone in it? Number 6. The driver behind the wheels of black Ferrari F355 Spider. The film's producer, Neil H. Moritz, appears in the film as a driver. He is behind the wheel of a black Ferrari F355 Spider during the race war sequence, and Brian O'Connor beats him in the race. The person who financed and produced the film, whose bet on this concept made the entire franchise possible, is in the movie being defeated by the main character in a drag race. The film's director, Rob Cohen, also appears as a Pizza Hut delivery driver. These cameos were not publicized in the marketing. They are small jokes embedded in the background of scenes that the filmmakers knew only the most attentive viewers would catch. The technical advisor for the film, Craig Lieberman, appears as a launch guy during the race war start sequence, which means 3 of the production's most important behind-the-scenes figures are visible on screen if you know where to look. And some of the production's connections extend even further, linking it unexpectedly to other major films from the same era. Number 5. It shares a location and a writer with Training Day. The street where Dom's Dodge Charger crashes at the end of the film is the same location used for the first narcotics bust in Training Day, which was released the same year. Training Day was also written by David Ayer, who co-wrote The Fast and the Furious. The production used significant Los Angeles locations that have since become part of the film's identity. The Toretto House in the Angelino Heights neighborhood of Echo Park, the real store that served as Toretto's Market and Cafe located at 1234 Bellevue Avenue, and Dodger Stadium for the opening scene where Brian tests his Eclipse. Little Saigon in Westminster, Orange County served as the location for the Johnny Tran sequences. The film is a time capsule of early 2000s Los Angeles geography as much as it is an action movie. And when the film finally left theaters, its popularity didn't slow down, it simply shifted formats. Number 4. The DVD release broke major sales records. The DVD release of The Fast and the Furious set a record that was remarkable at the time and has not been widely remembered since. When the disc was released on January 2, 2002, it sold 2.1 million copies in a single day, making it the second highest single-day DVD sales of any film in history at that point, behind Pearl Harbor. In its first week of video store rental revenue, it earned $18.65 million, a new record that beat Cast Away. It was eventually surpassed by Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but for a brief period. And yet, for all its commercial success, the film's final rating was almost very different and potentially far more limiting. Number 3. It nearly became an R-rated film. The film very nearly received an R rating instead of PG-13. The MPAA had concerns about specific elements of the film's content during the rating process, and the production had to make adjustments to secure the PG-13 designation. An R rating in 2001 would have significantly limited the film's potential audience and box office performance. The PG-13 rating allowed the film to reach the teenage demographic that became its core fan base, and that drove its enormous opening weekend. The franchise that followed, with its expansion into larger and more expensive productions, was built on an audience that was able to get into the first film on opening weekend because the MPAA cleared it as suitable for younger viewers. A single rating decision could have materially changed how the franchise developed, and even after the rating was locked in, the filmmakers weren't done shaping the story's final impression. Number 2. The alternate ending changes everything. The alternate ending of the film, titled More Than Furious, is almost completely different in emotional register from what plays in theaters. The theatrical ending shows Dom taking the super keys from Brian and driving away to freedom while Brian faces the police alone. A moment of sacrifice that functions as both a friendship conclusion and a franchise setup. The alternate ending involves Brian being dropped at the Toretto house by his police supervisor Tanner, where he finds Mia packing to leave, intending to move away. The two endings represent fundamentally different ideas about what the film is about. The theatrical version is about Dom and Brian, their brotherhood, and Brian's choice to honor it. The alternate version is about Brian and Mia, and what the undercover mission has cost them personally. The theatrical version won because it was always the more cinematic conclusion, but the alternative exists and has been available on home video releases for viewers who want to see what the film could have been. And looking back at everything surrounding the film, its biggest twist wasn't anything that happened on screen at all. Number 1. Everyone misjudged the film before it became a phenomenon. The most significant weird fact about The Fast and the Furious is how completely wrong everyone was about what it was going to be. Universal wanted to spend $20 million on it. Timothy Oliphant called it stupid and walked away. Critics gave it a 55% on Rotten Tomatoes and called it cheesy teenage exploitation. The studio initially positioned it as a modest spring release before a Sacramento test screening persuaded them to change their minds. What actually happened was a $40 million opening weekend, a global gross of more than $200 million on a $38 million budget, and the launch of a franchise that has since released 11 main films, a spin-off, a Netflix series, video games, theme park attractions, and a roller coaster opening at Universal Hollywood in 2026. The total franchise earnings at this point exceed $7 billion worldwide. It all started with a Vibe magazine article about street racers in New York, a deal for the title that involved trading stock footage to Roger Corman, and a cast that was assembled after the original choices for every major role either declined or were replaced. The franchise that could not have existed became the franchise that will not stop existing, and none of the people who made the first film had any idea. Which of these 21 facts surprised you the most? And does knowing all this change how you think about the film that started one of the biggest franchises in movie history? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.